They called him the golden boy of the 60s, a voice that could melt hearts, a smile that lit up television screens. He wasn't just a singer or an actor. He was a phenomenon. Teenage girls screamed his name. Magazines raced to feature his face. And then, at the height of his fame, he vanished. For years, fans wondered what happened. Why did someone so adored, so visible, step away from the spotlight just as his star was shining brightest? Now, decades later, the final chapter of Bobby Sherman's life has been written. And it didn't unfold in a concert hall or on a red carpet. It ended in a quiet California home, in the presence of love, pain, and the slow fading of one of pop culture's most gentle souls. Bobby Sherman, 81, died peacefully at home on June 24, 2025. But the journey to that day began months earlier, with a whisper from the past. It was early in 2025 when Bobby's wife, Brigitte Sherman, noticed something was wrong. He had grown more tired than usual. Simple tasks took more time. At first, they chalked it up to aging. After all, Bobby had been active for decades, known for his discipline and work ethic. But test results brought something far more serious: stage 4 kidney cancer. The disease had quietly spread throughout his body before making itself known. There were no early warning signs, no dramatic collapse, just a quiet invasion. For Brigitte, the diagnosis felt like a silent earthquake, life shaking beneath her feet, even though the world outside looked the same. Bobby, ever calm, took the news with a kind of quiet acceptance. He didn't cry. He didn't rage. He simply said, "Okay, we'll deal with it." But the cancer was aggressive. Doctors gave few options. There would be no long-term plan, no miracle treatment, just time and love. As the illness progressed, Bobby's energy waned. The man once known for electrifying crowds with his smile and voice now spent most of his days in a recliner, surrounded by warm blankets and his dogs. He didn't want to fight the inevitable in a hospital bed. He didn't want machines or beeping monitors. He wanted home. He wanted Brigitte. He wanted silence. And so, the Shermans turned their house into a sanctuary, not sterile or clinical, just cozy, just real. A place filled with laughter, the scent of morning coffee, the distant sounds of birds. Fans might have expected the legend to pass beneath a spotlight. Instead, he chose shadows and candlelight. In the final stretch of Bobby Sherman's life, everything slowed down. The world outside his window kept turning. Cars still drove past. Birds still chirped in the garden. But inside the house, time seemed suspended. A quiet hush fell over every room, as if even the walls were holding their breath, honoring the man who had once filled stadiums and television screens with light. It was in these days, fragile, quiet, and sacred, that Brigitte Sherman became not just his wife, but his world. From the moment they received the terminal diagnosis, she refused to leave his side. She set up his bedroom to face the garden, knowing how much he loved the way the sun came through the window in the mornings. Every cushion, every blanket, every lamp was adjusted not for beauty, but for peace. This wasn't a room of despair. It was a room of love. A room where Bobby would be reminded of who he was, not what he was losing. Each day, Brigitte would sit beside him and read aloud the hundreds of fan letters that still arrived like clockwork, most from people in their 60s and 70s, who had once pinned his posters to their bedroom walls and now held him in their hearts like an old love song that never got tired. She'd choose the ones filled with stories. A woman who met her husband at a Bobby Sherman concert, a former EMT who joined because of his foundation, a fan who said Bobby's music stopped her from taking her own life when she was 15. Some of the letters made Bobby chuckle. Others made him close his eyes and murmur softly, "I remember that song." Brigitte also played his records, vinyl copies worn at the edges, full of warmth and crackle. When Julie, "Do Ya Love Me" played, Bobby would sometimes tap his finger faintly against the blanket, mouthing the lyrics he knew by heart. His voice, once the soundtrack of a generation, was barely more than a whisper now, but the music still moved through him, as though the rhythm of his soul hadn't forgotten the stage. In those quiet moments, Bobby was transported, not to a world of flashing lights and screaming crowds, but to something deeper, a place of memory, of laughter, of innocence. As his body weakened, his sense of humor stayed. Even as lifting his hand became difficult, he'd find ways to make Brigitte smile. He'd joke about the mushy hospital food, or whisper sarcastic remarks about the corny Hallmark movies playing in the background. And yet, day by day, the man who had once danced across stages began to disappear into stillness. His voice trailed off. His jokes became less frequent. Even his beloved crossword puzzles were left unfinished. It was as if he was slowly letting go of the world, not in fear, but in quiet preparation. Then came one night more painful than the others. Brigitte had been up for nearly 36 hours straight, eyes tired but heart locked into watchful attention. Bobby was restless, his breaths uneven. He had barely spoken all day, but sometime after midnight, as the moonlight filtered into the room, he stirred slightly, looked at her with eyes foggy, but still full of affection, and whispered, "I just want to go home." Brigitte knew exactly what he meant. Not the physical home they lived in, not the hospital, or the house in the hills where he once recorded demo tapes. He meant home in the truest sense. A place of peace, of final rest, of release. The next morning, she called his doctor and ended further interventions. No more machines, no more hospital beds. She brought him home, his real home, for the last time. She lit candles. She played his music. And most of all, she never let go of his hand again. Every breath he took was met with a whisper of love. Every sigh was met with a prayer. He wasn't alone. He wasn't in pain. He was just slowly returning to the silence from which we all come. In those final hours, Brigitte did not weep. Not yet. She simply remained present, stronger than she had ever been. She knew the world was about to lose a star, but she was about to lose her universe. And when Bobby's breathing grew soft, then slower, then still, she held his hand tightly and pressed it against her heart. In the end, there were no crowds, no curtain calls, just a quiet goodbye between soulmates. And perhaps for a man who once chose a life of service over fame, that was the perfect final scene.